Hello, this presentation is on child abuse identification and reporting, presented by the Department of Risk Assessment at North Carolina State University. As a disclaimer, some of the material in this presentation may be difficult for some participants due to the nature of the topic. Any images and examples that are used for educational purposes are solely there to reflect the reality of these situations. There are four major types of maltreatment. We will be talking today about physical abuse, neglect, sexual abuse, and emotional abuse or psychological maltreatment. For purposes of this presentation, we will be using brief civil definitions of each form of abuse obtained from the Child Welfare Information Gateway fact sheet that was published in April of 2019. Physical abuse is the second most common form of abuse suffered by minors. According to the Child Welfare Information Gateway, physical abuse is non-accidental physical injury to a child caused by a parent, caregiver, or other person that is responsible for the child, and that may include, but it's not limited to, punching, kicking, beating, biting, shaking, throwing, stabbing, choking, hitting, burning, or otherwise causing physical harm. Injuries can range from minor bruising to severe fractures or even death. Neglect is the most common form of abuse reported. 75% of children that have experienced abuse have suffered from neglect. Neglect is frequently defined as the failure of a parent or caregiver to provide for a child's basic needs. Neglect includes the following categories: physical neglect, such as failure to provide necessary food or shelter, or lack of appropriate supervision. Medical neglect, which is failure to provide necessary medical or mental health treatment. Withholding of medically indicated treatment is a specific form of medical neglect that is defined by the Child Abuse Prevention and Treatment Act as the failure to respond to the infant's life-threatening conditions by providing treatment, including appropriate nutrition, hydration, and medication, which, in the treating physician's reasonable medical judgment, will be most likely to be effective in ameliorating or correcting such conditions. There are some exceptions, but that would have to be based on the medical provider's judgment. Educational neglect is failure to educate a child or attend to special educational needs. Emotional neglect includes examples such as inattention to a child's emotional needs, failure to provide psychological care, or permitting the child to use alcohol or other drugs. Of reported incidents to Department of Social Services across the nation, 8.4% indicate allegations of sexual abuse. Sexual abuse includes activities by a parent or other caregiver, such as fondling a child's genitals, penetration, incest, rape, sodomy, indecent exposure, and exploitation through prostitution or the production of pornographic materials. Emotional abuse is the least reported form of abuse, but it can be the most psychologically damaging. Emotional abuse or psychological abuse is a pattern of behaviors that impairs a child's emotional development or sense of self-worth. This may include such behaviors as constant criticism, maybe bullying type of behavior, calling an individual names, communicating threats, so threats towards the child, threat towards loved ones, threat towards a child's pet, rejection, such as withholding love, support, or guidance, and even exposure to domestic violence in the home. Now that you know the definitions of abuse, such as physical abuse, neglect, sexual abuse, and emotional abuse, let's talk about how to recognize the signs of possible abuse. Examples would include, but are not limited to, maybe frequent or unexplained injuries. They may show signs of being hypervigilant or on guard. Um, they may have pattern injuries. They may have inappropriate clothing to cover injuries, or they may shy away from touch or flinch even when you raise your hand. They may be excessively withdrawn or overly compliant, fearful, or even anxious about doing something wrong. Or they may act parentified or infantile, such as rocking, thumb sucking, are great examples of an individual who's acting infantile as a self soothing technique. Another sign could be that they're wearing clothes that are ill fitting, filthy, or inappropriate to weather, may exhibit bad hygiene, untreated illness, or injuries. Um, you may be aware that they are living in a dirty home. And a dirty home means many different things. And when we talk about filing a report, I'll give you an example of how to report that. They may exhibit trouble walking or sitting, which could be an indicator of an injury. They may exhibit inappropriate knowledge or interest displayed of sexual acts or seductive behavior, which could be an indicator of sexual abuse. It could be an indicator of being exposed to sexually explicit material at a young age. They may not want to change clothes in front of others, but not a lot of people do want to change clothes in front of others. So it doesn't necessarily mean that an individual is being sexually abused. However, it's a good indicator, especially if you see a pattern of these signs, that maybe something else is going on with them. They may have or report an STD or pregnancy, especially under the age of 14. They may have a habit of running away from home, which if you look at statistics related to children that live on the streets, oftentimes they'll report running away from home due to experiencing some form of abuse. And then also, maybe they've had an attempted suicide. Again, attempted suicide wouldn't be necessarily an indicator of abuse or neglect, but maybe an indicator something else is going on with that minor. Child abuse and neglect can have lifelong implications for victims, including overall impact on their well being. Though physical wounds may heal, there are many long term consequences of experiencing trauma. Therefore, as Vicki Pollan states, when one suspects a child is at risk of being abused or neglected, morally, we are all mandated reporters. The university has a campus workplace violence prevention regulation, and in that regulation, we talk about violent behavior and your reporting responsibilities. As employees of the university, you shall immediately report any acts of violence, potential violence, threatening behaviors, or other violations of this regulation to an immediate supervisor or second level supervisor if the alleged perpetrator is that immediate supervisor, the risk assessment case manager, an employee relations staff member, or university police. If it is an immediate safety issue and you are on campus, you must immediately report to university police. Not only do we have a university regulation that talks about reporting as it relates to violent behavior, potential violent behavior, we also have a child abuse reporting state law here in North Carolina. And in that law, it specifically states that any person or institution who has cause to suspect that any juvenile is abused, neglected, or dependent, or has died as a result of maltreatment, shall report the case to the Director of Department of Social Services in the county where the juvenile resides or is found. The report may be made orally, by telephone, or in writing, and it shall include the name, age, and address of the victim, the name and address of the parent, guardian, or caretaker, any information on other children in the home, and specific details of the abuse allegations. So, for example, earlier we talked about a dirty home. So specifically is what does it look like? Because your definition of a dirty home may be different than the definition of the social worker who's taking the report. So it's going in specific details. What did the minor share with you, or what were your observations, and what did it look like? If certain terms are being used by the minor, then use those particular terms to define certain types of behavior that you're reporting to social services. I would always highly recommend that if you're going to make a report that you do it by telephone or orally, because the reality is when you submit it by telephone specifically, the social worker would be able to ask you specific questions as it relates to the alleged abuse behavior, and you would be able to provide them with more information that way. The key thing is to report things early and often. Do not wait to the end of the day. Do not wait until you go through with your supervisor what was shared with you. The moment a minor shares with you concerns related to abuse or neglect, you must share those concerns immediately. So now that you know what could be shared with you, what do you do with it? So during disclosure, there are several things to think about. You want to make sure that you avoid denial, even if you think that what they're sharing with you may be untrue or it's about someone that you know and that you trust. You must avoid denial at all cost. You must listen to them and don't make any assumptions. Provide them with a safe environment as they share with you their story. Reassure the child. Do not interrogate them. Do not ask multiple questions. That is not your role. Make no promises to them, and they'll ask you to make a promise not to say anything. And what I would encourage you to say is things like, I can't make you a promise that I won't say anything, but I can promise you that if there's something I do have to share, that I will let you know right away. The key thing is to document exact quotes. So if there's particular words or terms that are used, quotes are very helpful. It helps as it relates to making sure that you're not making assumptions based on statements that are being made. You want to be supportive and non-judgmental. You just want to listen. You want to make sure you're seeking advice. You have many experts here at the university here to provide you with guidance and support. So if you're not quite sure about a particular situation, you need to make sure you call us. And then the next thing is you need to make sure that you report the concerns immediately, whether it involves one of your staff members or another minor or a situation that's occurring at home. You must report that immediately. The key thing, just like the slide says, you need to listen, really listen to what children are saying to you. Next, let's talk about boundaries. It's important in your roles here at the university to set boundaries with minors. You want to avoid touching a minor anywhere. Do not assume that a hug or touch is acceptable to the minor. Remember, they may not feel comfortable in voicing their needs, so I would encourage you to avoid engaging in um, using physical contact with a minor. Do not invite the minor to your home or into your life. Examples would include in social media, personal correspondence. Remember, you're working with them in a professional role. Even if they try to connect with you on social media, I would encourage you to avoid doing that. Do not give minors gifts or special favors. You want to avoid one-on-one time if possible, and you want to avoid inappropriate conversations. Remember, it's your responsibility to set and maintain appropriate professional boundaries with your minors. If you have concerns related to a minor's behavior, how to address a particular issue, or even regarding another staff member's behavior, discuss it with your leadership. There are many resources that are available to you. On this slide is the phone number to Wake County Department of Social Services. If you click on the link where it says list of county DSS, It'll take you to the website that has a list of all County Department of Social Services phone numbers that are available for you to reach out to. If a situation is occurring on campus, I would encourage you to reach out to University Police. If it's an emergency, I would encourage you to dial 911. If you have an incident that's occurring off campus, such as our 4-H camps are a great example of it, to reach local law enforcement, I would encourage to call 911 for emergencies. If you have questions on whether or not to report a particular behavior or any type of additional training opportunities, please don't hesitate to reach out to the Risk Assessment Case Manager at 919-513-4224. We now have a Youth Programs and Compliance Office led by the Director of Youth Programs and Compliance. If you have questions related to your youth programs or compliance related issues involving minors on campus, call 919-515-4256. As faculty and staff at the university, there are wonderful resources available to you if you need additional support, such as free counseling sessions or connection to other resources or assistance. Please don't hesitate to call the Faculty and Staff Assistance Program at 866-467-0467. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to call our office. Again, the number is 513-42244, or you can go to our website, which is vptm.ehps.ncsu.edu. Thank you and have a wonderful day.